Hi, Destiny.
Hello.
To go over consent before we start. Just so you know, nothing leaves this room. We are being recorded. If you mention wanting to hurt someone else or yourself, that's something I do have to report. Um, and that's it. So, how have you been feeling this past week?
Um, exhausted. I started a new job. I love the job. I love what the company offers. It's just that when you like do training, you have to like watch videos. You have to like listen to people lecture. Because with this particular company, training happens at a center. So you're in a room, kind of similar like this, with other people that are training as well. Like there's 9 other people that are there with me, and so it's like hours of like watching videos, and then you pause the video, and then the training guy get up and like talk to us for a couple of hours. So it's very like mentally draining. So then to come home and then have to do more homework, and then like even today I was having a hard time in class. Like I don't know if you saw me, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
like I'm so mentally drained because I'm just like I've been trying to learn the stuff for the company and then the homework at the same time, which I know after training it'll get better because my job is basically working with kids, so it won't be the lecturing 24/7. But I just feel overwhelmed with listening to someone talk right now. Like I'm really
Yeah.
tired. You can probably see the bags in my eyes. Like
And I saw that you rubbed your face even just talking about it, so I hear it's pretty overwhelming.
yeah, it's a lot. And then like just trying to catch up and to do the work. And then it didn't help that I got locked out of my Canvas last week. So I didn't get to take the midterm until Monday. So that kind of threw everything else off, because after you get done 8 hours worth of listening to people lecture, then you go take a test. Because I had taken the test the same day um, that we did the other session.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time we got done with that, I didn't feel like doing anything else. Like I was mentally done for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I said, I love the job. My mood is good other than just being tired. I just really need a me day. Really, like I'm so tired.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. Maybe we could do a 5 minute breathing exercise just because might rejuvenate, help a little bit. So if you want, we can lay on the ground.
Sure.
Okay.
Do it. All right.
And
Y'all
the
in
way
the
I do
opposite
it.
way. Can they see? Okay, yeah, they can see us a little bit.
And the way I like to do it is 4 breaths in or 4 counts in. Like
And that's breathing out?
No, that's breathing in for 4 beats, and then you hold for 4 beats, and then exhale for 6.
Okay.
But if you need to adjust that for what's comfortable with you, that's fine too. And we'll do this for 3 or 4 minutes just to start the session. So in for 4.
Okay.
Hold for 4. Out for 6. In. Hold. Out. In for 4. Hold. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. Alright. You wanna keep going or?
Nope. We can finish. I mean, we can end it.
Okay.
I get any more relaxed, we're gonna go to sleep.
Right.
Okay.
So how did that feel for you?
That was actually kind of relaxing.
Yeah.
I do feel better. Still sleepy, of course, but I don't feel as like anxious. Like I gotta do this. Like my brain was still running on like I'm in training because I mean that was kind of like less than 24 hours ago because that was yesterday. So you know, but I do feel a little better.
Good. Yeah. Sometimes when I have a lot going on, I need to give myself at least 5 minutes to just, breathe and calm down. So if you like, I have an activity we can do. It's called a traumagram, and it's basically just we kind of go over major life events that you've been through, anything that kind of marked as emotionally significant or traumatic. We kind of put it on a timeline. So here you go. I'll show you this.
Okay.
Here's a pen. So what would you say, kind of after your birth, what's sort of the first thing you can think of on your list? Like how would you lay out major life events for you?
Well, this one I don't really remember, so I don't really know if that would qualify as traumatic, but I was born with water in my lungs, so I could have almost didn't make it, but they were able to, get the pump the water out and stuff like that. So I guess that would be, I wouldn't say that's the first one I remember, that's just the first, I guess, kind of traumatic events I was told about, like as a kid, that,
Right, like your body could hold a memory of that trauma, even if you don't have that memory.
I'm trying to think of any younger trauma. My dad's side of the family, I didn't really care for them growing up. I had an aunt in particular, she would always make me feel uncomfortable. Like, she would do weird stuff like, oh, like say we went to take a bath, right? Oh, well, why can't you just draw off in the living room in front of everybody? We all have the same thing. That's uncomfortable. Like, I don't care if we do have the same thing. It's about personal space. So at a young age, it was like I was taught to not have boundaries for myself. It was like, no, you're gonna do this because I said you're gonna do it, even if it is uncomfortable. So I would say that's like where the trauma began.
Yeah.
There.
So tell me more about that. How often did you have to see her?
I went over there quite often. She would always. My mom says that one time I came home like bawling, and she was just like, "I can't go back over there. I can't. Like, I don't want to go." I don't know if it's something that I've suppressed because I to this day I don't know what she's talking about. I don't remember that. So I don't know if it was whatever happened that was so bad and I didn't get the help or the attention that I needed that I just suppressed it and moved on. I'm not sure if that will ever come up. So even to this day, I don't really care for her. I've always seen her to be like a very messy individual. And the kid that she adopted and the kid that she adopted within the family is like neither one of them really kind of deal with her. Like, she was the same way towards me. Kind of like verbally abusive. She never was physically abusive, and she never was physically just abusive towards me because I wasn't her child, so she couldn't do too much. But I did get some of the, like the slight insults, like, "Oh, you got on some tight pants there," or, they were very. His side of the family, in my opinion, they all need help. That's just it's the way they grew up, though. They grew up in poverty, and so because even at family functions, they'll do stuff like, say someone makes a banana pudding, right? And instead of or I'll give you two examples with that, right? Okay, say someone brings a banana pudding, and they'll be like, oh, let's say like my aunt Mary or somebody. Let's just use that example. Like, I have my aunt Mary. Just like, Mary, they all eating up your banana pudding that you brought. Like, as if it's an issue. Like, okay, they're eating it. That's what I brought it for. Like, why is that an issue? Or they'll do stuff like, let's say the same Aunt Mary will bring a banana pudding. They'll be, oh, put that in the back. Only certain people can get that. So then you'll see certain people only getting banana pudding because it's not for everybody. Like, childish stuff like that. So it's like,
almost trying to start conflict.
Right. Just to feel like, oh, I have more because they didn't have nothing or anything. Not that that's a bad thing, but basically like a compensation for when they were younger and didn't have much. So it makes it, oh, look what I got that you can't have. You see what I mean? Like, and now that I'm older, I recognize it as that. But when I was younger, it was just frustrating because I didn't understand it from that level.
So being left with her as a kid, you felt unsafe, but you were stuck there.
Yeah. There was a couple of times where I felt unsafe like that growing up, actually. My parents, because they're pastors, when they were younger in the ministry, they would travel a lot more to different churches and stuff like that, of course, because they were younger. And a lot of times they would leave us with other people, church members. Didn't matter if we really knew the church members or not, or even really knew them outside of church. Because they went to the church, they were considered good people. Like, it was never a question of if I need to question them or it didn't matter if I was uncomfortable, I was still going. So I was in a lot of uncomfortable situations. And how I know I'm not over-exaggerating how much we're with other people is because my mother actually told me that I asked her one time if we could stop going over so many different places. So for a child to ask their mother that should tell you just how much they had us with someone else. We're always with someone else growing up, all the time. Even I went on a cruise when I was 8, and we stayed in the room with one of the church members.
The whole time?
The whole time. Like, that was our room for the trip, was with the church member.
Okay. And so, just being young and constantly being exposed to these strangers and left with them, tell me more about how that felt.
I felt very neglected growing up. I didn't recognize it as that thing because, of course, a child is not going to be able to recognize those emotions like that. But now that I'm older and able to reflect and look back on that, I felt neglected growing up. I actually kind of was, to be honest with you. And like I said, as I get older, I don't really fault my parents too much because I don't think it was something they did intentionally. Because you know how you have some parents that will intentionally not give you the things you need because they're just evil like that. I think they were so caught up in doing for others and making sure the church, and then outside of them being full time pastors, they had full time jobs as well. So it's like they pretty much got caught up in their own life, forgetting that hey, you have kids that needs a new pair of shoes, or like it would be to the point where when we would go over people's house, they'd be like, why y'all don't have clothes, or why don't they would be so confused because how are y'all the pastor's kids and y'all don't have shoes and the stuff you need, or why is your hair not done? Like why am I having to ask to? Yeah.
So it never felt like you and your siblings that were the priority.
It was always the church, and the church. Even now, they'll still do that. Like recently, I had to ask them for help on some of my bills, and my dad like came up with this elaborate story about like how he didn't have it, didn't have this, and like not to go into too many details, but like my car note is like 2 something, and he's just like, oh, all I have to give to you is 300, and I'm like, but you have what I need, and I'm just like, okay, well then just give me 190 because I don't need, just so you're gonna make a big deal about it, and he's like, wait, your car note's not like 390 or something like that? And I'm like, no, it's only 2 something. Remember, we got a good deal. And he was like, oh, that was your sister. But that just proved to me right there that you just made all of that up. But if a church member was to come and say they needed help with like tires on their car or anything, it would be no question. They would give it to them. But it's like in me, oh, I need to see your bank account. As if I would lie or get over on my own parent. But if a church member needs it, they're faster to give it to a church member with no question than they are their own kids. We get questioned about why we need something.
So not even just their job, but even strangers that they met in church are more of a priority than you, is how it felt.
That's how I felt, yes. Like I said, even now to this day, it still feels like other people are a priority. They tried their best. I don't think, like I say, I don't think it's something they're maliciously going out of their way to do. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm in doubt about it, it's my parents, but I don't feel like it's like something they're maliciously, I feel like they genuinely feel like they're doing the right thing, but they don't realize like what they're actually, you know what I mean? Because they have things that they haven't healed from, so they can only see from as far as they healed. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So regardless of their intention, it still caused pain, though.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think we talked a little about bullying. I think my parents were the main things of trauma because my mom, she was very hypocritical of us. You need to lose weight. No, you can't get an adult meal. You need a kid's meal because then but we're eating out every day. So if I am overweight as a child, whose fault is that? I can't help that you're feeding me McDonald's every day and then yelling at me because I'm fat. Like, that doesn't make sense. As a child, I'm subject to the diet that you feed me. So again, if I am overweight, whose fault is that?
Right.
But it's as if it's your fault. You need to stop eating less. You need to join a program where maybe you can go to a fat camp where, I mean, your cellulite jiggles when you walk. Like my mom she was very critical like that. Or when I was, because I've lost weight, so when I was bigger and I was going through like a tougher time, big girls can't find clothes that fit them. Like little comments like that. It's like, why would you say that? How does that make? But honestly, I think it just comes from her projecting her insecurities and how she feels about her body onto me. So it's like, it's not that I'm not able to understand why, I get it, because as you can see, like I'm able to internalize it. It's just that just because I'm able to internalize it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt or it doesn't make me feel a certain way when it does happen. So yeah.
So tell me more about sort of how you would feel when your mom would say those critical things.
I don't know if I've just become numb to it, but I honestly don't know what I feel because a lot of times now it's done so much that it goes one ear and out the other, and it's just like,
sort of disassociate.
Yeah, I guess that's why I'm not a very, like, in order to hurt my feelings, you really have to, it's gonna take a lot to hurt my feelings. Like, because I grew up with a mother that basically was my bully. Like, not only was I getting bullied at school, but I come home and my mom's like, you need to lose weight. I'm like, okay, I think I know I'm fat. So even when I got older and I was like gaining weight, it was still like, oh, they're getting bigger. You need to lose. You know what was the way they made them finally leave me alone about my weight? It wasn't the telling them. This is the craziest part. This is what made them stop badgering me about my weight. I had to tell them, if y'all bring up how big I am, for each time you bring up how big I am, you have to give me $5. They stop bringing it up. But it's like, why did I have to threaten you with y'all's money? See what I'm saying? For y'all to stop to stop bringing up this. Like, I see that I'm big, I understand that, but again, unless I'm ready to lose weight, there's nothing that's gonna be done about it. Just like it wasn't. I didn't lose weight until I was ready to. Not because somebody told me every day that I was getting bigger. You know? But yeah.
So sort of your mother, who's supposed to sort of be your primary source of emotional nourishment, that was your main source of pain, it sounds like.
Growing up. Now that I'm older, it's weird because we have a better relationship. Even now, every now and then, I still have to take a break from her because she's still very. I see things my way, and that's it. Like, it's not. You can't really talk to her. Really, both of my parents are that way. They can be very manipulative if you let them. My dad is worse than my mom, but I believe she picked up being that way from him, kind of. Like, she already was like that, but it amplified when she got with him. Because if you're with a manipulator, you're going to learn how to manipulate. So, I catch her trying to do it, and I'll just be like, and for my dad, it's expected, so I'm just like, I've learned to just be like, yeah, okay, you know. But yeah, my parents, honestly, I could say I was probably, I guess you could say I experienced abuse growing up. It wasn't physical, but I mean, neglect is a form of abuse, so, I don't want to just make my childhood sound like completely terrible, because I mean, I had good moments, you know, like, there were moments where it was like, okay, yeah, you know, this is cool. But,
So do you get uncomfortable talking about that abuse? It sounds like talking about that makes you uncomfortable a little bit.
I think in the beginning when I first was starting to, because remember I told you I've been on this whole journey of like healing and self-discovery. I think in the beginning I wouldn't say it was hard, but it was painful. Like, I couldn't talk about it without just like bawling. Now I'm more accepting because I've processed it and I've understood the place that they come from. And I just understand that as long as they are stuck in the trauma that they haven't healed, their responses are going to continue to be the same. So I have two options. I have the option to keep complaining, or I have the option to kind of just deal with it and know that this is who my parents are, and I have to kind of put those boundaries up with them. Um, it's still a work in progress because my dad is he's very nosy. He's very um, he can be very controlling too. But again, it comes from his childhood because he felt like he didn't have control in his life, so he felt when he had kids that he was going to control every aspect. And he puts it in terms of, oh, I'm your father and I'm supposed to protect you. That's true. But you're not supposed to be overbearing, overprotective, overly strict. Just like I was saying in class earlier, I was just like, sometimes we would have family meetings where he would just talk for 3 hours. And then when we start to get rough, they get an attitude. See, what I'm saying is going one ear and out the other. Well, I think that would be for anybody. You've been sitting here for 3 hours now. It's not like we've been here for 30 minutes and I'm just, now all of a sudden it's going in and out like we've been here for 3 hours, sir.
That sounds traumatic.
Yeah.
Being
And it would be
lectured
about
at home.
lectured about nothing because I wasn't a bad child. I wasn't.
Mhm.
I snuck out once my entire teenage career, if that's what you want to call it. Like, I wasn't. I never got in trouble at school. I was the one that would be in the principal's office for a good call home or to say the pledge, or that my parents never had to come up to the school for anything bad that I've done. They never had teachers calling home saying I was skipping school or not doing my work. They never had problems out of me ever. But for the amount that we were in trouble, you would have thought that we were like problem kids. I mean, we would get in trouble for just breathing. Like, once he was like, "Oh, you're in your room too much, so you can't have any electronics or your phone or anything in your room." And I remember my sister. Till this day, we still cry laughing about this because it's like back then we were upset, but now that we're older, I mean, she was so mad because you could hear her in the room. Like she got after he said that, it's like again we were always getting in trouble for nothing. Literally, it was just he didn't want us being in the room, so now we can't have anything in the room. So she storms in her room and you hear her like unplugging everything. And she's like, and then she comes out the room and then like that was like a couple of years ago. So that was back when you had the TVs with the big back to them, those big. So she came out with one TV in her hand and the Wii in the other hand, and she was just swinging them back to the garage. Like she was so mad. but yeah, that's it's basically like little stuff like that we get in trouble for, or like having lectures about how we need to honor and obey our parents and not be disrespectful. And I'm just like, what are we doing that's disrespectful? Could be on the phone past 12, even on the weekends. I understood, even as a kid, I understood the weekday. You know, like we have school, I understand why you don't want us being on the phone past 12. I get that. We have to wake up at like 5:30 in the morning. So that's only, if we go to bed at 12, we're only getting 5 hours of sleep. Even as a kid, I understood that, but on the weekend, I still, even in the summer times, like it was still, you can't be on the phone past 12 because there's nothing to talk about that much, or you don't need to. It wasn't, now I can see if I had gotten caught sneaking out past 12, and now it's like, okay, you can't be, but no, there was no underlying reason. It was just like, basically that's what it is, now that I talk about it. Basically, it was like, he would put the punishment in place before it could even happen. You see what I'm saying? So that way, there was no room for it to happen. But you can't be like that because I wasn't that type of child anyways. And it was like when I went over, it was it was extreme to the point where I went over to my aunt's house for a week. And he told my aunt to take our phones at 9. It was that serious to him, so that we wouldn't be on the phone past then. And she asked us, like, why can't we have our phones? She was like, it's the summertime, like, I would let y'all have it for as long as y'all wanted to. And we was like, no reason, he just doesn't want us to be on the phone. And she's like, no, it has to be some reason. Y'all just don't want to tell me what it is. And he wouldn't just. So that was the response that we got from most people when we would try to tell him. Oh, no, there's an underlying reason. He wouldn't just do that just because he felt like it. It had to be something deeper. And I'm like, no, this is what we're growing up with. So a lot of times I didn't feel heard either. So a lot of times that has caused me to not speak up when I need to either, because a lot of times I didn't feel heard as a kid. It was very much, you're going to do it because I said you were going to do it, or no, that can't be right. He wouldn't do that just because. So yeah.
I know in an earlier session you said it felt very suffocating.
Mm-hmm.
How is that for you looking back? 18 years, essentially you probably lived with them. The 18 years of suffocation, do you still feel the effects of that?
I do, because I still do things, and like I'll still gaslight myself. Like even, it's hard for me to buy things that I want, because I'm like, oh, I don't need it. Because that was response to my parents. Like, if I want like something name brand, that's too expensive. You don't need to spend that much money on it. But why?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I telling myself that? If I have the money to buy it, and it's not gonna like put me on some type of detrimental debt, why can't I get it for myself? But it's that little tiny voice from my parents. You don't need that. That's too much. So it's like I condition myself to be the same way. Instead of just getting, like even now when I spend a lot of money on myself, I feel very guilty, like I shouldn't have done that.
Mm. Yeah. So it's almost like your dad's attitude made you feel like you're not worth those thin nice things,
Mm-hmm.
or to even enjoy your time.
Mm-hmm. I guess you could say that. So I guess I never really felt the need to get those things because I'm just like I don't really see the need. As I've grown though, like I keep saying, I am more interested in looking at, because before I wouldn't even look at designer websites. The designer website, I'm not paying $300, but that's like, I think that was my attitude because I was so conditioned for that to be my attitude. You know what I mean? Like, because if you don't, it's just, as a child, that gets frustrating. You can't have the same Nikes that your friend has, but you also can't complain about it because, they're not going to get it. Complaining is just they're just going to say you're being ungrateful. So it's like you kind of are forced to, be happy with like what you have and just be okay with it. Because even when I was thrifting another day with my boyfriend, and I was just like, oh, what about this? What about this? Oh, look at that, look at that. And he was like, how are you doing this? He was like, all I see is a bunch of used clothes. Like, he was like, but you're picking out pieces that, like, I would actually wear. Like, and people couldn't tell that it's from the thrift store. And I'm like, I grew up having to do this. Like, my mom would go to the thrift store for my school clothes. Like, and then we would have, like, a choice to get, like, a couple of outfits from the mall. Or, like, and even then, it wasn't name brand. It was stuff from like a Booyaka or like Image or like those old stores that used to be in the mall that you can just get like $15, $10 shirts from. It was never enough to get that the name brand stuff. They would never give us that much money for us because then that would basically be all the money they gave us that one name brand thing. So we had to learn how to. And what's crazy is I was known for like one of the people for I guess you could say best dressed. Like people used to always tell me, "Oh, you look so cute. You can dress." And half of the time it was from the thrift store. I just do it together, or I would take something and I would redo it a little bit, and I would fix it to where it fits in, or I would get shoes because for a girl it's a little bit easier to get shoes because they don't have to be name brand. You can get shoes that look similar, and for a girl that's fine. So I would get like the Converse from like Route 21 that would make my outfits look really good, and it would be like, oh, I don't think to this day now that I think about it, anybody noticed that I never really wore designer like that or like name brand shoes and stuff like that. But I was always well dressed. So yeah.
You kind of found a way to find the positive silver lining, even through all their negativity.
Mm-hmm. Basically, I would have to find ways, and I think that's why I'm so self-sufficient now because I had to figure out a lot on my own. I had to figure out, okay, I know I'm not gonna get the clothes I want. I know I'm not gonna get exactly. So what can I get that's similar? That people be like, oh, that is so cute. What can I do to this shirt that makes it just like everybody else's? How can I wear this? How can I? And it was very much like you remember like on social media where it'd be like where you do those to be honest's.
Mm-hmm.
If you could go back to my old Instagram, just about any to be honest that I got, if they knew me in person or even see my Instagram, the first thing they would say would be like, to be honest, you can dress, and then they would say like such and such. So it was like, but it's crazy because I actually in the 5th grade, I had an issue with dressing. I was actually known for not being able to dress, and people would make fun of me all the time. But I think what it was is that I had came from elementary that wore nothing but uniform, and so when your outfit is basically picked out for you in the mornings, it's khaki pants, button down shirt, blue pants. You don't really have too much style. And when you do dress on the weekends, your parents kind of pick that out. But even then, I've kind of been dressing myself since I was like 5. No exaggeration. But for the most part, my mom would, help us get dressed and pick things out. So in the 5th grade, we became completely independent because nobody was there in the mornings. My mom would be at work, my dad would be at work. I would have to figure it out, and a lot of times I would come to the school like, girl, what did you have on? And then there was like the 6th grade year, there was a friend that I met her in the 5th grade.